Hey folks, Breath of the Wild is an amazing game. It set a new standard for the Zelda series. It currently has a sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, on the way, and the big question on many fans' minds is, will the sequel be better? Or can the sequel be better? So I thought it would be fun to discuss what I feel the game must actually do in order to be better than its predecessor, Breath of the Wild. Sequels often have a hard time being better, especially when the originals are so damn amazing, but it can be done. It's just difficult. And to help with this colossal discussion, I asked my good friend Mr. Triforce Trends to join me in this video to discuss what we believe Tears of the Kingdom must do in order to be better than Breath of the Wild. Not just that, but I also joined him in making a video on his channel about the next trailer for Tears of the Kingdom and why it has to be huge. So be sure to check that out after this one. For now, let's hand over the famous and iconic line to our guest.
Be sure to go and grab yourself a snack or drink and send them in to get featured right here, and also be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel out, and let's get into this one.
Firstly, let's go over what we feel the game must do in order to be better than Breath of the Wild, areas that the first game lacked in, and Tears of the Kingdom has a great opportunity to improve upon. For me, one of the biggest things that comes to mind is the side quest department. Now don't get me wrong, Breath of the Wild had good side quests, but out of them all, only a select few felt like proper big quests, not a part of the main one. There were a lot of small tasks, fetch quests and stuff like that, which wasn't bad and should stay, but the depth of the bigger quests and amount of them is something I'd like to see improved upon, personally. And of course, speaking from my own view, it was lacking a bit in the game. Tears of the Kingdom could improve this by simply having more fuller side quests, longer lasting, more work involved, etc, etc. Another thing would be having more mini-games slash little fun things on the side to do. This obviously wouldn't make or break a game, but I did honestly feel that Breath of the Wild missed a little with its mini-games, or more so the amount of them. This is very much a personal thing, and it would give the game a better chance of being better for me personally. There was that bowling thing and some horse riding stuff, but nothing that memorable in my opinion. It especially lacked a fishing lock, and just having a fishing rod in general. It's fun things like that which add to Zelda games for me, moving them closer to the perfect game, so to say. Now, Tears of the Kingdom's setting might be more difficult to accommodate my examples, though I'd still love it to happen, but just generally speaking, more fun mini-games and side activities to do, ones that are more memorable and whatnot. And one more thing for me that the sequel must do better is have a better enemy variety. This is very important for me, and many others. Breath of the Wild did have cool enemies, but after a little while, they all began to feel very similar. Excluding the overworld bosses, the Bokos, Moblins, Lizalfos and those sort of enemies all felt super repetitive, and to a degree, I get the system with difficulty, but there wasn't much out with those three main overworld enemies. It's been said a lot, but bring back enemies like Redeads, Pose, Darknuts, warrior-like Stalfos, Eralfos, and of course new enemies as well. We know the enemies of the first game will be present, so there has to be a decent amount of new variety for it to be better, in my opinion. Of course there are other areas such as dungeons being included in the game, which is a massive must in my books, but I'll leave that area for Triforce Trends to get into. Speaking of which, now let's hear what Triforce Trends has to say on this matter.
Dungeons. Need I say any more? I probably should. In concept, the Divine Beasts were really great. These giant beasts that you could spot from wherever you are in the map. If you're in Gerudo Desert, you'll see Vandaboris from a mile away, or technically a giant storm, but the point stands. Varudania can be spotted from almost anywhere, as long as the beast is on the right side of Death Mountain. And truly, I've never felt the fear of the unknown as much as I did when I first looked up into the sky and saw this giant UFO looking thing just kinda circulating over Rito Village. As thematically cool as they are in concept and on the outside, they just don't do it for me personally. I know some people are very fond of them and nothing against any of you, this is just the ramblings of yet another Zelda enjoyer. The beasts offered some cool traversal puzzles and some nice looks at puzzles in the more traditional sense, but they were over far too quickly in my opinion. Some would suggest that worked in Breath of the Wild since the main game was focused around the open world. But I think having the main dungeons, not just the shrines, to supplement the open world gameplay and have them be about 40 minutes to an hour long as opposed to 15 to 30 minutes long would do a lot for me. I also missed combat being a vital part of a dungeon. There are only a few enemies scattered around each beast, and they're all pretty easy to beat when compared to some of the monstrosities seen around dungeons found in the past, like some of the amazing enemy design and variety seen in Arbiter's Grounds and other enemies in Twilight Princess. But of course, enemy variety is a whole different discussion. Dungeon theming is also a big one for me. If you stand Link in a random corner of each beast, I probably couldn't tell each one apart from each other. The only thing that would speak to me is whatever's around Link, since I've played through them so many times. However, if you show a non-Zelda fan a corner in most other dungeons in the series, they could probably tell you it looks like this has a grass kind of theme, this has a fire sort of theme. Each traditional dungeon is distinct and has its own style, while I personally think that the Divine Beast just stole their identity from the shrines, and I think that shrines even did the ancient tech theme way better if I'm being deathly cynical. I know I've spent a lot of time dogging on the beast, but I don't entirely hate them. I just want to emphasise that I want this to be even better in Tears of the Kingdom. Seeing a mix of both the Divine Beast and the traditional dungeon formula would be fantastic here. Something much more akin to Hyrule Castle in Breath of the Wild. It actually feels completely optional to explore and find some of the really cool stuff that's hiding beneath the surface of the castle. I'd like to see an even further expansion on this idea. This feels like the direction they wanted other dungeons in the game to go, but they kind of just lost the time to do it. This time they've had more than enough time to do a ton of stuff that they couldn't before.
So that's what we feel must be done better, speaking on points that Breath of the Wild lacked in. But how about what Breath of the Wild did spot on, or very well, that Tears of the Kingdom will have to match or do better? This is a very important point that often goes under the radar when asking this general question of, can the game be better? I mean, what the first game did well can't just be left behind, so the sequel will need to carry those aspects over. Or more so, the quality of them. For me, there are two key aspects from the first game that need to be brought over, matched in quality or done better. Firstly, the music. Whilst heavily criticised by some, it is undeniably fitting to the scene of Hyrule. The quiet, ambient, broken notes playing as you traverse a kingdom that once was. The game is post-apocalyptic, and the developers fit that vibe to perfection with how they approach the music. It picks up when need be, but for the most part, fits the empty shell that is this version of Hyrule. It makes you feel alone, lonely, and sad, whilst also capturing the beauty and peacefulness that comes with nature taking over the ruins. Now, the sequel is unlikely to have that exact same vibe. I'm not saying the type of music needs to be the same quality or better. I'm saying that how well the first game hit the vibes spot on needs to be right up there again in the sequel, fitting the majestic and ancient feel of the Skylands, the horrible new conditions of locations down in Hyrule, the creepy and unknown vibes of the caves, the sinister and evil aura that Ganondorf gives. The music needs to have the same atmospheric feel to it, the dynamicness to it. It needs to flow just as well, if not better. Secondly, the amount of realness the first game gave us. For example, how real the NPCs felt, how they'd seek out shelter when it rains, shiver at the cold, stumble when approached too quickly, the range of dialogue options, and just generally how alive they made the settlements and interactions feel. This is an aspect that must return with whoever we're encountering up here, down there, and just wherever our adventure takes us. Hopefully including Princess Zelda.
Clearly, the actual open world from Breath of the Wild is making a return in Tears of the Kingdom. So much so that it seems like the map is directly ripped from the first game, which is a cause for concern for a lot of people. Either way though, that concern isn't what I'm here to talk about today. Breath of the Wild is possibly the single most open game of all time. You aren't limited when it comes to where you're going to go and when you're going to go there. The only limitation you're ever given is the Great Plateau, and on your first playthrough, that's way behind you by your third or fourth hour in the game. Having the option to explore the entire map was, and I believe is, the whole reason why Breath of the Wild is still selling so well to this day. Having the ability to jump off the plateau and go directly to Lake Hylia or any other location you find interesting is just so enticing, and I just want that to continue in Tears of the Kingdom. This might seem like a strange ask, but I would really like it if throughout the open world in the next game, there aren't any loading screens apart from those seen when going to different locations, like the shrines in Breath of the Wild, or the Divine Beast, or if you're fast travelling, of course. To me, it adds something to the experience. It makes me genuinely feel like I'm travelling through this world, rather than me sitting in my room, on my bed, staring at a screen in my hands. It transports me to another world, one of the greatest things that I think a game can do. Tears of the Kingdom looks even more ambitious than Breath of the Wild, with little teasers at areas like caves and the obvious inclusion of the Skylands too, along with at least a really sizable chunk of the open world from the first game coming back again too. Having all of that happen without any loading screens is a huge ask. If we do get caves in the next title, I'm fairly sure they will have some loading. They would kinda have to. Though I also think they'd have something worth it at the end, with small caves maybe even being the answer to shrines coming back in some form, but that's getting into far more speculative territory. It doesn't seem like at least a layer or two of the Skylands will need loading zones, as we've all spotted from the latest trailer. All of this said though, if we are climbing these Skylands and we're limited by the height we can go after every dungeon while we try and climb our way to the top to reach Ganondorf, then yeah, I'll be fine with that. It doesn't have to be completely open like the last game, just keep that element, and I can't imagine they'd scrap it right after the success it brought the team, not just yet anyway.
To conclude, how realistic is the whole idea of the sequel being better than the first game? For me, it is possible, but will be incredibly difficult. The first game was a reawakening for how Zelda games work, so to top that explosion of new and awesome ways to play a Zelda game will be tough. But what gives it a chance for me is that due to the first game being so new and in a way experimental for the series, it has areas that can be worked on. As discussed today and expressed by fans, stuff like more traditional Zelda dungeons would instantly make the sequel a whole lot better in that specific area. There are gaps within the first game that can be improved massively. It will be a tough task, but one that is possible. Time will tell.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild is an amazing game, absolutely no doubt. In some people's minds, the first time you do something will never be topped. So can another open world Zelda game reusing the original world in some way actually even compete with the first? I think so, but that's because I can be quite cynical. It'll be hard to top it in some people's eyes, especially in the eyes of video game critics. But as I've said oh so many times, I have so much faith in the Zelda team to turn out an amazing game that I can't imagine they've spent the last few years just twiddle around with their fingers. I'm pretty optimistic on Tears of the Kingdom, and I cannot wait to see the finished product in around 6 months.
That concludes today's discussion. Let me all know what you lovely people think down below in the comments. Are we spot on here or missing the mark? Also explain your view on this as much as you'd like. I encourage it and look forward to reading and replying. Now this part isn't done just yet. There is another awesome video over on Mr. Trends channel which I've linked below and in the comments for you to go and check out. We're discussing a similar topic, which is our thoughts on why the next trailer for the sequel has to be huge. It's a banger. Go check it out. Oh, and here is the man himself before we wrap up this video.
I love this man and I love this channel. Seriously though, thanks for having me on the channel and I hope you all enjoyed. Since this video is only coming out a couple hours after, I hope you watch the main man either destroy the game show I'm hosting on my channel or flop. The show is called Triforce Trivia and make sure to watch the collab over on my channel too. Stay safe.
It's been a blast as always working together. I look forward to the next time. Be sure to drop a like down below if you enjoyed, and also consider subscribing for more fabulous Zelda content. Both would make my day. Follow my socials linked below to keep up to date, and as always, a huge, massive, amazing shout out goes to all of my channel supporters, with a very special thanks to new members, Ty Gurley, thanks a lot, as well as Marel and SGRD. Thanks a ton. Your support really helps me to make these videos week in, week out, all month long, 365 days a year. If you'd like to join them and get yourself a shout upon joining and your name at the end of every video, then consider supporting via the links below. Thanks for watching. I hope you all have an amazing day or night, and until the next time, I've been Hyrule Gamer.